Welcome back, everybody, to SME Connect, brought to you with Mashreq NEOBiz. This panel discussion is going to look at the opportunities and challenges, I guess, for SMEs in the UAE looking forward. And we have an incredible panel of 4 very important speakers. That is why I'm particularly feeling guilty for keeping them waiting. But let's try and get the most out of them now if we can. So, in order of the way they're written down in front of me, Dr. Karim Solh, he is the co-founder and chief executive officer of alternative investment company Gulf Capital. Welcome, Karim. It's great to see you again.
Thank you for having me here.
Ashish Panjabi is chief operating officer of Jacky's Business Solutions. Rakesh Khanna is the vice president of business solutions for Visa in the Middle East. And Rohit Garg is the Executive Vice President and the Head of NEOBiz for Mashreq Bank. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for your time and for your patience. I'm going to start, Ashish, with you. As a management consultant specializing in the SME sector, I think if you could perhaps spend a couple of minutes just setting out what your view of the SME landscape is in the UAE at the moment. How has COVID changed that landscape over the last 8 months, and where do small businesses find themselves today?
Sure. Thank you for that, Richard. So I'm not actually a management consultant, but I do work with a lot of other small businesses with the other hats that I have. What I've seen in the last couple of months since COVID is 2 things. One is the emergence of the entrepreneur, and this is the corporate employee who's now looking at it and saying, this is probably the time for me to make a change, either forced or unforced, and looking at what they can do next and pursuing what they feel a little more passionate about. I think given the 5 or 6 months that we've had, a lot of people have had time to reflect and think about what their purpose is in their life, and start to actually look at how they can monetize and pursue that. And I've seen a lot of conversations come my way where people have come forward and started discussing about either venturing into new businesses or pivoting their existing business in that direction. The other part of it has, of course, been your existing SMEs that were out there that have now looked at it and said, wait a minute, what's happened? And has my business case disappeared? And how do I survive going forward as well? And I think this is sort of where we've seen the resiliency of businesses in the region. And I think we are fortunate on many aspects in terms of where we are, because the economy has been open. We've been open to tourists. We've had everything happen. And if I compare us with other parts of the world, most parts of the world are in 2 camps. They either say we've got everything under control, but they're shut. In that no one can come in and come out of those countries. And the moment they open up, you sort of worry how they're going to handle with what comes in at that stage. And then you've got the other countries which are open and haven't been able to control the situation at all, and they've got back into lockdowns again. And you look at what we've got over here right now, and you see we've actually got an opportunity where businesses can grow and probably even thrive at this moment.
Is it your sense, Ashish, that the demand has not died in terms of, people still have spending power and the desire to shop and to buy services? It's just this sort of hiatus through, the disruption. And actually, if we are able to keep things open, then actually there's plenty of opportunity there for businesses. Or do you think the opportunity is now smaller?
No, I think if anything, the opportunity in many cases has grown. A lot of habits have changed, and a lot of habits have adapted, and we've seen the adoption of that. If I take the retail business, which is one which I'm quite involved in, retail sales recovered fairly quickly in the region. But on top of that, if you had your e-commerce strategy ready, you've got that as an additional layer of business on top in many cases now. And we've seen that.
If I can just ask you on that retail point, so my perception is that the retail sector, it's actually a very diverse set of sort of industries, and some parts of retail have done extremely well, particularly on the food and groceries side or on the tech side, but other parts in fashion, for example, have struggled. Am I wrong in that, or is it's not a common picture across all segments?
Well, I think that they're all changing and they're adapting at this stage. So yeah, definitely technology, furniture, anything to do with the house tended to do better. Grocery, F&B delivery, they've definitely done better. Fashion has gone through a change, and I think it's. And I was just telling the panel before this. This is my 4th time wearing a jacket since March, but I have ordered a couple of new shirts, and I've ordered them online, and they've been custom made and custom tailored, where I've done everything. But I realized I had to dress a little differently, and I bought for that.
I guess we can all wear jeans now. We have to wear a jacket on top, but jeans are fine for video conferencing. Okay. And there's one final question I wanted to ask you about. Now, for SMEs, networking is an absolutely vital part of business, making contacts and trying to find out partners, etc. How has that changed in your experience with your clients? How are they getting their networking these days?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm part of an organization called TIE, and we used to run a number of events every month. And those were great because we used to meet a lot of small SMEs that were coming in, and we would introduce them to people, and a lot of networking happened that way. And we've done about 35, 40 virtual events since March. So the face-to-face interaction hasn't been there, but what we've seen is the engagement on the digital platforms tended to increase. And I think the most important of them has been LinkedIn. I think we're all a lot more active on platforms like LinkedIn at the moment. And we're all getting approached a lot more. We're all introducing ourselves to people through LinkedIn, and I think there are a lot of platforms such as that, where people are still connecting, and I think that's only going to continue to grow. And once we get back into the in-person events, which we've started to see a few in Dubai, and we've got JITEX happening next month over here, we will see that, plus we'll also see the hybrid of the online events.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, if I can move along to Karim. Karim, thank you for your patience through these technical challenges at the beginning of this session. Now, Gulf Capital, you're the founder and chief executive officer of Gulf Capital. Gulf Capital is an investment company, and you have, I guess there's two parts to your story, or there's probably lots of parts, but you have your existing investment companies, and you have your opportunities in the future for new investments. So if I can ask you about those two parts, what have been your experiences on your existing companies through the past 8 months? And looking forward, I mean, you've just recently been signed a big investment, and looking forward at new opportunities. Has the market improved for investment opportunities looking ahead? So if you could sort of shape your comments in those two areas.
Sure. So we own about 25 portfolio companies across the sectors here and across the Gulf region and Egypt. So we have a good finger on the pulse of the economy. And Q2 was very difficult, but I'm happy to say that Q3, Q4, our portfolio companies are back. They're about 80 to 100% of where we were last year. So there's a clear recovery here happening. And we've actually pushed our portfolio companies very, very aggressively to three things: analyze, stabilize, and strategize. Analyze their business and what's going right and what's going wrong. Stabilize the businesses, reduce burn rate, extend working capital, talk to the banks, and make sure we have a healthy business with enough liquidity for the long run, because this is going to be a long winter and it's going to spill into 21, and we want to make sure all of our companies had enough staying power till the recovery comes. And the last one is strategize. We encourage them to dream big, look into the future, lean into the future, reinvent their business model, embrace digital, and adapt for the new reality, essentially. If you haven't reinvented your business during COVID, you haven't done your job, essentially. So every single company had to present to us a case of how they're reinventing themselves and pivoting towards the future in terms of products, online presence, new services. In terms of new investments, essentially, obviously, the world has changed a lot. So we're very focused on our priority sectors, which are healthcare, education, technology, payment, business services. These are growing very nicely. And we're kind of avoiding what we call legacy sectors, reducing our oil and gas, construction, F&B, retail exposure, moving into those fast-growing sectors. One of our investors told me once, you want to buy the future and sell the past. So as a firm, we're clearly pivoting towards those sectors of the future that are growing at double-digit growth rate.
And are there, Ashish was talking just now about, an increase in entrepreneurship and new company startups. Are you seeing a sort of rapid growth of opportunities from an investment point of view in those new sectors? Or is everything sort of on a sort of holding pattern until there's a bit more clarity?
Honestly, I think investors are sitting a bit on the sideline to see where the dust settles and when is the recovery starting. But they're keeping an eye on businesses that thrive in the new economy. So any business that has a digital online e-commerce angle gets our attention. And also businesses that are in defensive sectors like healthcare are also interesting for us. So it's you're either embracing technology, online e-commerce, or you're operating in more defensive sectors that are surviving COVID nicely, like healthcare, online education, health tech.
And from a sort of finance perspective, governments have steered a lot of money into stimulus support or monetary easing. And as you have just said, a lot of existing companies need to extend loans or borrowing to keep cash flow going. Does that create a shortage of liquidity for investment?
Look, I think liquidity is tight. I have to say banks in the UAE have been very supportive. We've talked to our lenders early, and they understand what's going on. They helped us reprofile debt and extend that service into the following year. So they've been good partners, but liquidity is tight. And on the new investment side, I'm seeing a lot of venture capital funds pop up looking to back the next big Solh or InstaShop or Karim of the region. So I'm seeing more capital flowing into the early stage and venture capital scene, which should be exciting for the startups of the region.
Is that an area that Gulf Capital looks at? I mean, I know that you tend to have sort of more mature companies that you invest in. Is that you talked about sort of new strategies going forward? Is that an area that is of you think there's an opportunity?
Definitely. I mean, even Gulf Capital, we as a firm have to evolve, otherwise we fall behind. So we're trying to reinvent ourselves, and part of it is going earlier stage into technology and promising businesses. So we have done 6 technology deals to date, invested almost 2 billion dirhams in the space. We're in payment, we're in e-commerce, we're in artificial intelligence, telemedicine, e-pharmacy. So yes, we are trying to embrace this new economy, invest in it and be part of it.
Fascinating. Well, Karim, thank you very much for your time. We'll come back to you in just a moment. And I want to move on to Rakesh Khanna. Rakesh is the Vice President of Business Solutions for Visa in the Middle East and broader region. Rakesh, thank you very much. Again, I apologize for keeping you waiting due to technical problems at the start of this discussion. What's your view, what's Visa's view of the SME landscape in the Middle East and particularly in the UAE at the moment? Is it now extremely vulnerable and you don't want to go there as a credit provider, or is actually now a great opportunity to sort of rethink and restart?
No, thank you, Richard, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me here amongst the esteemed panelists and the speakers today. So just to give you a perspective, I look after business solutions for Central Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa, which is CEMEA. Now, we're a team where the focus is primarily on innovative products and solutions, working closely with our clients who are banks, fintechs, other technology partners, who then support businesses of all sizes, starting from a micro small business to a small business to large multinational corporations, as well as governments in CEMEA. Now, this year, of course, we've always focused on the small business segment, but this year the focus is even much more, considering the impact on them this year. Now, just to give you a perspective, what we've seen is, and our focus is that we want the economies to recover like everyone else, the banking institutions. We just spoke about Gulf Capital focusing on that. Ashish spoke about that. Now, 90% of the businesses are small businesses, and they're generating up to 60% of the employment. Now, what we wanted to do is, we've always heard our clients and our clients' clients, and we really also want to understand what clients are feeling at this stage. So I'll give you a couple of insights on that as well. And I'll talk about some of the challenges that they typically face, how they've gotten more accelerated, and how, as Visa, we're trying to help them out as well. So just in terms of a couple of insights, it was good to hear that SMEs are actually trying different approaches from other speakers as well. Now, when we did our survey, we found that 67% of the SMEs have tried a new approach. And that's also because they're listening to their consumers, who are now 78% of them demanding a different way of operating or making a payment. So the first thing I'll call out is everyone's focus has been on safety. So contactless, we've seen a massive demand on contactless payment from our perspective. In fact, almost half the small businesses have started allowing contactless payments for the first time since the start of COVID-19. Now, that's a massive, massive increase. And nearly half of the consumers said they will not go to a store that does not offer a contactless solution. The second thing that we're hearing is they still have concerns on revenue and attracting customers, which has always been a concern, but of course, it's further accelerated on the back of the current pandemic. Now, I think SMEs are pretty agile. What they have done is almost 30% have started targeting advertising on social media and started selling products online. So that's a big change again that we're seeing. Now, we called out, Emma called it out, the Back to the Business study as well that we had conducted, that also shows that SMEs are concerned, but they're also looking forward to the holiday season. And I think the most important piece is going to be digital transformation for SMEs to survive as well as grow. That's going to be critical for us. And I think just to add a couple of more points, not just from a survival perspective, but digital will help in a lot of areas. The first one being, obvious one being, you can really add new customers. You can go cross-border, which you otherwise can't if you're not digital. Of course, the most important piece is, how do you really go digital, set up that e-com site, which is growing at a tremendous pace now. So Visa is also helping and has created a small business hub across countries to really help small businesses understand how can they digitize, how can they build those websites. This is all in addition to all the solutions that we provide as well. I think that in these times, that aspiration, that thought leadership needs to be much more. We need to advocate much more as well.
Okay, thank you. Rohit, welcome back. I was just, before we lost you briefly there, I was just wanting to follow up on some of the questions that have come in from the audience today, and there's been several about the difficulty of borrowing from banks. If you're a small company, it's more difficult for you to borrow in the current climate. I don't know if that is a correct perception. That could just be the experiences of one or two people. So what is, from a bank point of view, if you could perhaps set out your thoughts on how the SME landscape has changed this year, and then perhaps address some of those issues about how can I, if I'm a small business, how can I access finance?
Sure. Thank you, Richard, and apologies everybody for the technical challenges that we're facing today. Look, I think the world changed dramatically. SMEs have changed. The banks have changed as well. It was alluded to earlier that even before that, SMEs were not doing dramatically well because of the hangover of the retail, the real estate bust, etc., etc. Now, how has the landscape changed? I think it's very important to understand that UAE Central Bank and the banks in the UAE were one of the first to act. And I think during this crisis, there was a lot of support which was made available to the SMEs in terms of deferments, in terms of loan restructures, in terms of reducing cost, etc. for them. It was led by the central bank, and I think all banks participated. Mashreq was one of the early movers as well. Almost 10,000 SMEs benefited. There was almost 5 billion of loans which were restructured, pushed, no extra fees was charged. But ultimately, the issue is not bank support. The issue is lack of cash flow in Q2. And how will they pivot towards the new model? Dr. Karim mentioned it as well, that there is a change in landscape which is happening. The traditional service platforms or service-led businesses where typically SMEs used to be prevalent, not going to be able to function normally. Not this year and perhaps not next year as well, or at least part of next year. But there are opportunities emerging. We talked about, there's opportunities emerging in well-being and healthcare, in agri-tech, in home entertainment, in food and online delivery, cybersecurity, virtual reality, etc. And there are areas that we are seeing who are moving towards that. That change of business model is something that they'll have to do themselves. And being smaller firms, being agile, they can adopt technology faster. Adoption of technology, in my mind, is no longer a choice. It's a must-have. And this whole technology adoption, digital transformation will give them, certain inherent advantages which can help them scale and reduce cost. So the discussion in my mind for the SME is not about how the bank is supporting. I think it's more around how will they adapt to the new normal. Because this is not something which is just going to go away tomorrow and things will be back to normal. I think fundamentally things will change. People who started using digital or e-commerce are not going to stop using e-commerce all of a sudden. People's buying habits, the way they use home entertainment, the way they work from home, these habits are not going to change back to where they were, let's say, in March of this year or February of this year. So I think that adoption of technology, of fundamental transformation, is really key for SMEs.
And do you think, that my sense is that the giant tech companies, they've got a huge advantage in the digital space over traditional startups and small companies. Has that advantage disappeared now with wider access to broadband and digital support and app creation and all of that sort of thing? Is it a level playing field for startups or small businesses, or do small companies need partnerships with the larger entities?
I think technology is a great leveler, and to my mind, people will require partnership all the time. So it's not either of the two, but from a small business perspective, technology can help them increase efficiency and productivity, reduce all setup costs, capital costs that you erstwhile business model needed. You could use a cloud-based solution for your HR, marketing, accounting, even banking, right? And reduce cost quite substantially. It can reduce make your manpower a lot more flexible. It can reduce your sales cost if you're doing e-commerce. It can give you access to customers, new markets, platforms and ecosystems can really redouble, whatever you're doing. It gives you the power to understand the customers and hyper-personalize if you adopt technology in a major way.
If I could, Rohit, sorry to interrupt. Just your comment there about going into the cloud with some of your back-end processes. That reminds me of Karim's point just now in terms of Karim described with his investment companies, you know, that a sort of three-stage process of reacting to the current environment, and the middle part of that was about looking for these efficiencies and savings on the existing processes. So Karim, just on Rohit's point there, how easy is it? You know, have your companies found it quite seamless to transfer from their established processes to go into the cloud with their accountancy, or is that quite a challenge for most small companies?
Well, I mean, we had started a move towards the cloud from last year. We invested a lot and we went paperless. And I'd like to say we were smart, but actually we were just lucky on the timing. And so when COVID hit, we were able to work from home very efficiently and seamlessly, and we didn't have any interruption essentially. And we had pushed our portfolio companies to also do that and embrace technology. And we are on a big outsourcing drive. We are actually outsourcing a lot of our functions to specialized niche players. We get better service at much lower price. So outsourcing is there, technology is there, cloud and e-commerce, etc. So the technology is there if you are meaning to use it and if you look for it, essentially. So it's no excuse. And in fact, we're reinventing our business. Now we're wondering, why do we need so much office space? We're working more efficiently at half the office space, essentially. And we'll be leveraging technology much more in the future.
Interesting. And so I imagine for a lot of small companies, you know, they've not had the investment to sign up to cloud-based, you know, finance support or outsourcing support in the past. They've maybe done it in-house on Excel spreadsheets, etc. So that shift, that's been quite easy for them to do, your portfolio companies?
Well, we had to nudge them and encourage them to look for those solutions, but they're there, and we actually share best practices between portfolio companies. So we have our chief technology officer speak to the tech team across portfolio companies. We tell them what worked, what didn't work. We've tried a lot of software and communication devices, and we spread that knowledge to ensure our portfolio companies are using the best technology and going online as fast as possible. I'll give you an example. I mean, I think we spoke about it in one previous session. We have a business called Chef Middle East. We're the leading food distributor to restaurants and hotels in across the UAE and the region, essentially. Very physical brick and mortar business. And we take our food supplies to the restaurants and hotels where the customers come. Well, we figured if the customers are not coming, especially during lockdown, why not go to them, essentially? And we launched at Chef Middle East a website, e-commerce capability in less than 2 weeks. Our website is chefmeathome.com, and we start now delivering to consumers directly to their homes, essentially. And we stumbled during COVID on a new business opportunity, which we didn't have before. We're purely B2B, and we said, if the business is not coming, we have to go B2C. In 2 weeks, we're live, online, delivering at home, serving customers wherever they are.
Wow, that's incredible. So congratulations on that. Does that then feed back into your strategy more generally, shift from B2B to B2C?
Well, it's you have to follow the consumer behavior, right? If the consumer is stuck at home, you have to go to him, essentially, and fulfill and deliver to him at home, essentially. So yes, B2C is becoming very important.
Interesting, thank you. Rohit, if I can just come back to you. So Karim mentioned there that they'd implemented some digital transformation strategies last year. You know, they got lucky on the timing, it was before. Well, you launched NEOBiz before, you know, a year ago. We're celebrating the first anniversary. So how has, you know, when you launched NEOBiz, it was to reflect the digital transformation and many of the trends, but how has the landscape changed for that business, you know, from where you were 1 year ago when you launched this new business platform, digital platform, to, I mean, is it a case of just being lucky, right place, right time, or have some of the assumptions changed?
Look, NEOBiz was launched about a year ago, and it was launched to solve an existing problem. And the problem was that many small businesses were not able to access banking in a coherent manner. So there were various surveys, and they mentioned that there were 2 or 3 major issues that they were facing. One was the time taken for them to access even a bank account or open a bank account, and second was the cost. And third was that this transformation has only got pushed because of COVID. That transformation, that change and adoption for digital was already there. It's only exacerbated now. So NEOBiz was essentially to solve for that particular problem. I think as COVID hit, customers realized and embraced this digital offering in a far more coherent manner than perhaps what we had imagined. So as a result, we've got now thousands of customers, who are really making an effort and are extremely happy with the fact that you can still open a bank account with very minimal contact. You can still get full service, operate your banking, and continue to focus on your business without the need to, go anywhere physically. And second important thing was the cost. So because you get access to a lot of value-added services, we're also an acquirer, so we offer POS terminals, e-com, payment gateways, etc. These were not things which were so easily available last year for small businesses or startups, either in terms of information or in terms of costs being high. So it came at a great time for everybody, and we're glad that so many customers have welcomed.
Well done, and congratulations. Ashish, we've heard from you and from other speakers today about the resilience of the UAE's SME sector, and that's a fantastic success. But we're now seeing in markets like Western Europe and in America a surge in COVID cases and increase in national lockdowns in Europe, for example. Should we be concerned in the UAE and in the Middle East about some kind of spillover effect that kind of undermines the strong position we're currently in?
So I think one of the lessons that we've seen over here is the country has got the capacity to handle the situation. We've got the bandwidth in terms of hospitals. We've got the infrastructure in place. I was traveling recently as well, and when I compare with the schools over here, I'm on the advisory board of a school here as well, and the track and trace mechanisms we've got. If there's a COVID case in the school, make sure that things can continue, whereas they haven't got that in other places in the world. But the bigger concern, I think, is the fact that we are dependent on the rest of the world from a supply point of view. And the bigger challenge has been the disruption in supply chains, because we have to import a lot over here. A lot of what we need comes in from outside. For the electronics business that we're in, we've been in a constant shortage for the last couple of months, and we don't expect that to continue or to get better anytime soon, because there is more demand than there is supply for laptops. There is more demand than there is supply for tablets. There is more demand than there is supply for televisions. The supply chains either couldn't anticipate that level of demand or were impacted because they were shut down, or the logistics were impacted. And I think that's been the bigger concern with the rest of the world, again, going back into closure. Is the supply chain actually going to impact us again over here?
So how might that affect business then? Do you, and maybe this is one for Karim as well, do you anticipate, Ashish, that we will see more localization of supply chains as a result of that, to sort of build in security into the supply chain? Or will we see just more warehousing? People will stockpile to give themselves more contingency, or do we just carry on and accept the disruption?
No, definitely. I think localization is something that's we've seen that with the food security agenda that the UAE's got, and they've been quite vocal again on that. We're seeing it with a lot of the other development that's happening as well. one of our other businesses is we supply 3D printing equipment and robotics, and there is a demand for that over here because people are looking to produce locally or develop locally, but you can't build that overnight. So we are at a stage where, at least at the basic level, which is at the food level, we're getting that secured locally, but I think the rest will follow as we go on.
Just quickly, I was asking about visas. You talked about digital transformation, and as a payment gateway service, what is Visa doing to sort of accelerate and support small businesses as they sort of try and make the digital transformation?
I think our strategy really hasn't changed. We were already doing a number of things, from enabling, working closely with our banking institutions, fintech partners, to get the capabilities which then can be deployed across small businesses. Whether it's looking at a digital onboarding of small businesses, and we've seen Mashreq's being the first one to launch that first year anniversary as well. But we're also making sure we're partnering with other fintech providers, because a lot of banks don't want to really create a digital engine of their own. So what we're also doing is making sure we partner. Partnership is really important, closely with banks and our fintech partners, to make sure we get the right solutions to the small businesses. I think the other critical area from a small business perspective, and I don't know if you heard me earlier or not, but when I was talking about digital transformation, digital is really critical, because a couple of things that the small business can really benefit from is access to data. Now, if they have data, they can really take a decision on their customer habits. They can really look at the data and say, what am I spending on as a business, and should I be spending on that? And therefore make much smarter decisions. So in addition, what that also does is they can actually review if they're spending more on something and actually start reducing costs. So it's both a revenue increase as well as a cost reduction play for them. I think once you have data available digitally, they can leverage working capital. So I think we're working with a lot of partners today where we're saying, this is the data from a payables and receivables perspective. How do we partner with the banks, with the fintech partners and the small business to provide that credential so the lending institutions can take a decision as well? So I think now we're working on a lot of these areas. I think it just got accelerated. And what we've seen, the change happening in the last few months, is actually a change which otherwise would have taken about 3 years to take place. So I think a lot of focus on e-commerce and digital commerce, because that's going to really solve for the pain points of the small businesses.
On the data point, for small companies that you're advising, use the data. The data is there, capture it, use it, analyze it, and sort of learn from it. That's not easy. Not everyone is comfortable with that. Does Visa or do other entities provide data in a usable format? Do you support companies with analytics, or how if I'm a small company, what do I do with data? How do I get it? What do I do with it?
No, that's a great question. So look, we work with our financial institution partners to provide access to the data. So the small business can actually, we've got an analytics platform as well. In fact, in the last few months within this region, we've actually provided the Visa Analytics platform. So even the banks can see how their customers are behaving and what they're doing. And that platform then can be taken to the small business to give them a perspective on what are they spending on, what are their consumers doing as well. And it really comes into play because in addition to the banks, we also partner with other fintech partners who are into loyalty solutions, etc. So they can bring it all together as well. So it's a collaboration effort, I would say. But we can provide that access to the data. And like I was saying before, we have expense management platforms. So if a small business today is making a spend, they have visibility to that. In addition, what we're also doing is integrating our expense management platforms with accounting platforms. So that creates a lot of efficiency for a small business and takes a lot of admin effort out as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, Thank you, Rakesh. Rakesh, I'm delighted that we were able to get you back for the 5 minutes there. That brings us to the end of our session. Now, we will share the video link for this session and the other sessions with everybody who is attending, so you can pick through. We've covered a lot of ground in these last 40 minutes or so. So we will share it, you can watch the video again. And also keep your questions coming in to MEED and to Mashreq, and we will share them with the panelists. These are very important issues. But that brings us to the end of the session. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Karim Solh, the founder and CEO of Gulf Capital, to Ashish Panjabi, the Chief Operating Officer for Jacky's Business Solutions, to Rakesh Khanna, the Vice President for Business Solutions at Visa in this region, and to Rohit Garg, the Executive Vice President and Head of NEOBiz for Mashreq Bank. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and for your insights. And once again, I apologize for the disruption. Thank you also to all of you who have attended this panel discussion. It's been great to have you, and thank you for your questions, which I have tried to steer to the panelists. Now, I'm going to hand over to Subrata Som, who is the Senior Executive Vice President for Retail Banking at Mashreq Bank. So NEOBiz is a digital platform for businesses at Mashreq Bank, but it's part of the wider retail banking group. And as we have just heard from the panel, there are some very important shifts and trends going on across that sector. So I'm going to hand over to Subrata Som to say some closing remarks. Now, you can capture those remarks by going to stage 1. We're currently on stage 2. If you go to the left-hand side of your screen, you can see on the stages icon, the camera icon, click on that and you will see stage 1 as an option. Go to stage 1 and you can capture the closing remarks and highlight comments from Subrata Som, who's the Senior Executive Vice President and Head of Retail Banking for Mashreq Bank. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you next time, and I'll see you on stage 1. Thank you.